I want more good people to enjoy fairness, even if only a few. Here's your look at Threezero, Jujutsu Kaisen, Megumi, Fushiguro. FigZero 1/6 scale Megumi Fushiguro is approximately 11.6 inches tall and is fully articulated collectible figure with over 32 points of articulation. The head is sculpted by renowned sculptor Akinori Takaki, and the materials used for the figure are mainly PVC and ABS. The character's costume includes the Jujutsu high uniform and a pair of high socks, which are both made of fabric. The figure comes with 2 interchangeable faceplates, both neutral face and injured face, and 6 sets of interchangeable hands, including his signature shadow technique gestures. The figure also comes included with accessories such as wooden tonfa, 1 cursed sword, 1 sealed box, 1 pair of brown ankle boots. The sealed figure can also store Sukuna's finger included that came included with the Yuji Itadori. Just before we deploy any divine dogs, let's grab the old tape measure just to see how tall Megumi Fushiguro is. While I'm doing this as well, I'd like to once again thank the folks over at Threezero that did provide this sample of Fushiguro that we could have a look at this review. Counting including, of course, the points on the top of his hair, because he's got quite spiky hair. You're looking, though, at the figure of Megumi being about 11¾ of an inch tall, or the figure's going to be about 30 centimeters in height. Backtracking just a bit to bring in the earlier looked at Yuji Itadori, you can see that in this case, Yuji Itadori is going to be taller than Megumi Fushiguro. A figure, though, that's smaller than him, though, is the earlier looked at also as well, Nobara Kajisaki, which in this case, she only goes to about, I would say, maybe the chin or just below the eye area here of Megumi. Once again, Threezero spoils us with the amount of accessories that come included with all these Jujutsu Kaisen figures. One such accessory was alluded earlier when we had a look at Yuji Itadori. The figure comes included in this case with a little finger box. The finger box will hold Sakura's finger. It involves basically just sliding along the top lid here. You don't have to slide it off completely, but then taking yourself the tiny little finger we had a look at earlier when we looked at Itadori. Very small, and I was surprised, in fact, that I hadn't lost it yet. But let's go ahead and carefully put the finger in the box. Tuck that in there. At least it will serve as a storage place to keep the finger safe and, again, preventing it from being lost. When you are putting it in, there is actually a pointed section to the back of the finger. You want to make sure it's kind of facing down so that it's going to be much flatter and allowing the lid then of the box to be able to slide close. You have to really make sure that the finger's all the way in there, though. A few little passes of actually doing this. There's the spike right there. See, the little end of it is sticking up a little bit more, so we just want to make sure that that part is the part that's facing down. And we'll go ahead and get the lid and put that back on there. It's not, granted, the easiest thing to do because, of course, you're having to contend with the fact that the finger is sticking up as much as it is. But just push it down as best you can get it. Now, see, I'm going to have to just turn this around just a little bit. I have it in. I think I have it in all the way now. And we'll just go ahead and get the lid back on there and close the box shut. This may be very well the only time I'm ever going to be doing this, but I'll keep at least Sakura's finger safe and sound inside the box. That's going to come along with, like I said, Megumi. Let's move that to the side. The figure also comes included with some weapons. We can pick up a pair right now. Some wooden tonfas, if you're interested in those. They seem to be similar in color, although this one on the bottom is a little bit more darker of a brown. I would imagine it would be. Case in point, obviously, if you get this figure for yourself, maybe the colors of these will be hand-painted, so maybe the tonfas may not always be identical. You can see that it does have the additional wrapping done here in black. These can be held in his hands. The figure does come include with some gripping hands, so yeah, you can easily... The fingers themselves are fairly enough soft plastic. It's not super hard, in fact, to actually get the tonfas in there. You can have them displayed with tonfas that way. Or the figure also comes included with, I really like to look at this, the cursed sword. The sword itself looks once again to be using a dark gunmetal gray. The very edge of it seems to be more of a lighter silver. It's not sharp, so it's not going to be drawing blood, but at the end of it, it's certainly very pointed. The guard itself is handled well here in more of a metallic silver, or metallic gold. And again, the guard, or the hilt section of it is kind of more of a crimson burgundy. I like the little tassel that they've also added to the very end of it. And like the tonfas we had already looked at, you can then take the provided gripping hands and you just fit the sword into the hands. For me, I think I would likely display, Fushiguro with maybe some of the poses, the technique hands that he comes included with as well. But you can take the sword, just have to kind of get it around his thumb. And the figure does have the means to hold the sword as well. While we're certainly on the topic of hands, the figure also includes a couple of various technique hands. Now, it comes with gestured hands, which will also serve as the shadow technique hands, or the new signs. These, again, nicely sculpted, fairly pale in plastic color. You can see as well they've taken the time to sculpt the nails on each of the individual fingers. The figure also comes included with the right hand serpent sign gesture, which I guess would not only serve the purpose of being a serpent sign, but also I suppose you could also take yourself, for example, the box. I guess maybe this would be an ideal hand for holding the box as well, if you want to keep Sakura's finger there. The figure, does also come included with just a straight gripping hand, which we already looked at, the fact that one of them was already holding the sword. Then the figure also comes included with the shadow technique hands for the Chimera Shadow Garden sign, which is one of the only times I think I've ever seen, at least reviewed here on this channel, a pair of 6-scale hands that are actually attached to one another. The hands themselves do technically fit to the sockets of the forearms, and he does have enough posability technically to bring the arms closer together. So I like the fact that they included that. By far, though, my favorite of the accessories, or at least of the hand department, the figure comes included with the Shadow Technique hands, or the Divine Dog sign, which is actually what we started this review with interlocking hands like this. More the flat hand on the one side, reached around hand on the other side. And then what you're going to do with any one of these hands, simply remove the existing hands from the forearm. While doing it as well, I'd always like to usually hold the peg, just to kind of keep the peg from falling out. I think when we had a look at, was it Yugi maybe, or was Nabara? I think it was Nabara. When we looked at Nabara, her hands were a little bit more prone to falling out of the sockets. The pegs were very loose. They aren't as loose, it seems, with Fushiguro, but still be careful when it comes to changing out the hands. You're going to take one hand, and you want to make sure, of course, you got it going on the right side. Yeah, got it going on the right side. So you're going to take the one hand and, of course, attach it onto the peg as you normally would do with any set of hands. Then you want to just kind of bring the hands out. Just reach the hands around, and then you're going to attach the other hand, literally on the other hand. You're going to attach it then onto the other peg. It seems like it would be harder than what it is. I mean, really, once you get the one hand in place, that's the easiest part. It's then matching up then the other hand with the other side of the forearm and attaching it in place. While I don't have it 100%, at least you can see, like, you can have the means with the provided double hinging in the elbows. You can actually have the figure displayed with the gestured hands in place. Just gonna have to make sure I probably pop that back in a little bit better than what I have right now. Removing those for at least right now, because it's going to be making things a little bit harder to look at the figure, of course, when we have two hands attached. Let's go back to maybe the closed fists. We'll pop those back into place. We'll do the exact same thing on the other side. And once those are in place, we'll get back to looking at the accessories that come along with the figure. So popping that finally in place, there we go. The other accessories, not that you would consider it necessarily an accessory, but along with Fushiguro, the figure comes included with a pair of swapped out pegs. You get quite a lot, actually. In fact, it looks like you get a pair of pegs for each one of the hands. I'm just counting out the hands right now. Well, we got six extra hands, and we also got ourselves, in this case, 4 pegs, plus technically the 2 that are in the forearms. So you get some extra ones just in case you happen to break any of them. Move that to the side. The figure also comes included with the injured face, which seems to be following the same suit as when we've looked at the other 2 figures, with both the case of Itadori and Kujisaki. I ended up displaying both the figures with more of the expressions on their faces more shown. I might end up doing the exact same thing, I think, when it comes to Megumi. I think I like the idea of actually displaying him with more of the injured face instead. To show you the difference between the 2, let's go pick the figure up and you can see the difference between the 2 head sculpts. I just think there's so much more personality on these expressioned faces that Threezero pack along with the figures. Changing the heads are a little harder in this case when it comes to Megumi here. What you have to do, instead of actually taking the hairpiece off when we looked at before with Itadori and Kujisaki, this is actually not a case where you're going to be removing the front hairpiece off at all. What you're going to want to do instead is mind the pointed hair. You're just going to pop the head off from the ball joint, just divorce it for right now. We're going to put the figure down, at least what's left of it, down below right now. And then you're going to take the front of the face, which one last time, just before we do that, show you guys what the face sculpt looks like. I mean, really, the neutral face is fine and good. There's nothing really wrong with it at all. It looks fantastic. I like the panel lining that they did around the eyes. More of a somber looking face. And again, he's got the very panel lined, very thin looking eyebrows there as well. It's a great looking head sculpt. But I think really just between the 2, I like this one so much more, with the blood again all over the face. Now, to change the head out here, all you have to really do is just grab the front of the face and slide it down. That's it. That's all that's required. Basically, what you're doing is you're removing it from the pegs that are on either side, and then there's a long slotted piece of rectangular plastic. That's the only things that are keeping the face in place. face in place. Then from there, you're going to go ahead and take the injured face. And again, it's a little harder to do because, of course, while you're doing this, you want to make sure that you're not pricking yourself in the process. But you want to make sure everything's sort of lined up. While doing this, sometimes I found myself kind of catching some of the hairs. I may want to just get that under there. If I could offer up one recommendation as well, is when it comes to changing out the face plates here for Megumi, just attach them first by the ears, or let that be the first thing that you get attached properly. Because if you try to attach it by the forehead first, you'll notice that it leaves behind quite very easily noticeable gaps on either side. The ears seem to be the hardest thing to attach, or at least the pegs that are in the inside cavity of the head. So put the ears in first, or make sure that they're fully attached in first, and then you'll notice that the front peg here, the one that sits underneath the bangs, is the easiest of the three to attach. With the hair now in place, and of course leaving some residual damage here on my fingers, let's go ahead and take then the head sculpt that's floating here from Megumi and attach it to the rest of the body. Putting it down is not the easiest thing to do, of course, because you're going to be putting pressure against the spikes of his hair. But I got to say again, like, that looks so much nicer with the expression on his face. Granted, there is a lot more damage and injury happening here to his face, but I think it looks so much nicer than the defaulted head that we start with at the beginning of this review. For the rest of the figure's body, like the case before when we looked at Itadori, the figure here of Megumi is sporting a Jujutsu high uniform, and it's made of the same material as well. It's sort of like a parachute nylon material. It's very smooth to the touch. The quality of the material is actually really good on this, as well as the seaming. The way they've actually stitched everything together, it's clean. There's no residual left behind threads dangling. It's a very well-tailored jacket. The jacket sits quite high, so periodically you may find myself, or may see me actually kind of just bringing the collar piece down. You can actually see then the sculpting underneath of Fushiguro. The thing about it also as well is that the jacket is one piece. So if you think for a second that the side flap here is something that you can detach via Velcro, it's not the case at all. This is actually all sewn in place. Any little bit of pulling could run the risk of actually ripping it. It does have some additional gold added there with some snaps, both on the collar and on the front there of the flap. But overall, it's a very, again, well-tailored jacket, consistently good with all the other Jujutsu Kaisen figures that we've also had a look at. Again, just like, look at the really well-seamed lines here that we're getting here for the figure's jacket. From there, further down, of course, we also have the matching pants. The pants, though, sit high, like they did with Itadori before. Underneath that, you still get yourself the socks. The socks themselves seem to also be the case where they've pegged them in place. Like the socks, you'll notice, I don't know if you guys can actually see it or not. We looked at this also when we looked at Yuji, but there's a peg right there that I can see at least, that it looks like they probably would have glued the sock right there, because you can't move it at all. The socks themselves also seem to be more of that nylon material that, of course, then carry down onto his slip-on boots that he wears below. Overall, again, just a really nice, well-made costume, well-made figure. And again, the wrapping of that, of course, is looking at the boots also as well, which I think, again, are really well handled. Lots of posability that we're going to talk more about in a moment. Speaking of articulation, I guess not more in a moment, right now, for the figure's articulation, Fushiguro, start with, of course, his head sculpt. Just watch ourselves that we don't prick our fingers in the process. So the figure, okay, does have a ball joint right here where the head is essentially attached to the neck. The head does look, I will say, a little bit darker in color, but it's pretty close to the coloring of the plastic that they use for the neck below. I really also am impressed with the way they've sculpted the neck too. Now he does have a ball joint, so like right here, for example, you can hinge the head up, down, back and forth. And then the figure also has, in addition to that, a secondary ball joint. If I can actually just bring back the collar, you may be able to see that a little bit better. The head does look down because of that, does look back, forward, and again, you can rock it back and forth as well. All essentially the same articulation as the other two figures we looked at before. Shoulders come out, although I noticed in the case of Fushiguro that his arms are a little on the more tighter side. This arm I actually end up having just to kind of bend it a little bit more than I really wanted to, and eventually it seemed like the joint freed itself up. This one arm, though, is still pretty tight on this one side. You can bring the arms forward, of course. You can bring the arms back. The figure has a bicep swivel, of course. The figure does have a double hinge. Nice to see double hinges continued over with this line. And the figure does also have a swivel back and forth because the way he's attached onto the pegs. Upper torso, once again, ball joint happening here. Now, the figure, if I can actually show you where the articulation points is. So he essentially has like a space right there where you'd be able to move the torso back and forth. So right already, you can move the torso back, forward, back and forth, side to side. But then the figure also has a secondary ball joint, which would be like the abdomen area. So he essentially has one up here, and he's got one here. And that was also the case when we looked at Itadori as well. Legs do split out. You can only get so much mileage out of the leg splits. That's as far back or far out as you can actually get for them. You can bring the legs forward easily. You bring the legs back also as well. Swivel it once again at the top of the thigh. The figure does have possessing a double hinge on the knee. And again, very generous articulation when it comes to the ankles. Not only can you move back and forth this way, you can also ankle rock them. So there's lots of articulation happening here with Fushiguro. Then again, just to bring back in the other figures we've already had a look at, we're now, 3 figures in? We've done pretty good for ourselves. First, we, of course, had a look at, if I can actually reach around and just grab them from the side of the desk here. We, of course, first started our reviews, the Jujutsu Kaisen figures with the Yuji Itadori. Free up a little bit of space next to him. Then, of course, we had a look at Noboru Kujisaki, which, again, is the smaller of the 3 figures, but I think she made more than up for it with the fact that she had as many accessories as she did. And then wrapping up things, of course, we also now had a look at Megumi Fushiguro. We have one last figure to also have a look at as well, but I'm really liking what we've been getting here with the Jujutsu Kaisen figures from the folks over at Threezero. All in all, have been really great looking figures. Equally good head sculpts. And one thing, again, you'll be consistently seeing probably with all these reviews that we've been doing is, while we did start things in a defaulted face sculpt, ultimately, though, we ended up wrapping up the end of the review with what I feel to be the better looking head sculpts, the expression faceplates that all came included with the 3 figures so far. I think of the 3 figures that we've looked at so far of the Jujutsu Kaisen line from Threezero, my favorite right now is Megumi Fushiguro. I really like the look of this one. Spiky hair, yes, so it's going to be a little bit harder, of course, to change the face on. And unlike the ones that we looked at before with Noboru and Yuji, it's not the case this time around where you're actually going to be pulling the front bangs off, pulling down the faceplate. You actually have to take the entire head off of Megumi before you can actually slide down the faceplate, which is easier, but it also makes things a lot more hassle when it comes to actually having to touch your fingers against the spiky hair that he has on the top of his head. I like the look of him again, like he's got some great tailoring done to his jacket, tons of cool accessories. And finally, he does actually have a place to store Sakuma's finger. Comes included with a little finger box, which I think is a nice touch. It also is kind of a bonus, makes you feel rewarded in some sense that we did get the finger with Yuji, and now we finally have a place to store it when we got Megumi here. But what do you guys think of Megumi Fushiguro? Let me know down below in the comments section. And once again, a big thank you to the folks over at Threezero that did provide the sample of the Jujutsu Kaisen Megumi Fushiguro that we could have a look at in this review. The figure, as far as I know, is available as of right now. And if you check along through the various online sites that you normally buy your figures and collectibles from, you'll probably notice the whole line of Jujutsu Kaisen figures available right now from, again, the folks over at Threezero. What has been your favorite figure of the ones that we've looked at so far, thus far? Let me know down below in the comments section. Also as well, if you guys enjoyed this video, want to hit it with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and on board to see more, then make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and that you're also turning on the bell notification. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.